Great event that took place in our history was the building of the railroad tracks from sea to shining sea.
Performing Iron Wheels a Rolling.
From the east and the central from the west, racing toward each other to prove which one was best. Iron wheels are rolling down the new build track. Each train kept on going, no thought of turning back. A lot of tired workers laying rails along the line, met at Promontory Point in 1869. The going wasn't easy, there were mountains to go through with solid rock to blast away. Had to build some bridges too. Across the rolling prairie, they struggled hard each day, and finally came together, was on the 10th of May. Iron wheels are rolling down the new build track. Each train kept on going, no thought of turning back. A lot of tired workers laying rails along the line, met at Promontory Point in 1869. It was quite a celebration, what a noise the crowd all made when they drove that golden spike and the final track was laid. Transcontinental Railroad joined the east and west as one. With its wedding of the rails, a new age had begun. Iron wheels are rolling down the new build track. Each train kept on going, no thought of turning back. A lot of tired workers laying rails along the line, met at Promontory Point in 1869. They met at Promontory Point in 1869.
The Spike 150 Children's Chorus, conducted by Claudia Bigler and managed by Jaron Putnam. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, please, the Golden Spike National Historical Park Superintendent, Leslie Crossland.
Good morning, and welcome to Golden Spike National Historical Park. Thank you so much to all of our partners, volunteers, and participants here today for your help and support. The landscape that is seen here at Golden Spike is mostly unchanged since 1869. And we want to recognize the area as ancestral lands of over 22 American Indian tribes. Since 1916, the National Park Service has been entrusted with the care of our national parks. We safeguard these special places and share their stories with millions of visitors every year. Today, I have the distinct honor and privilege to introduce the Secretary of Interior, David Bernhardt. Secretary Bernhardt leads a department which stewards our public lands, oversees the development of energy, supplies water to the West, and upholds trust responsibilities to federally recognized tribes. Please give Secretary Bernhardt a warm Utah welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Leslie, for the introduction. And kids, you're phenomenal. You're absolutely phenomenal. Well, the first thing I want to do is welcome you all here today to the Golden Spike National Historical Park, not site, and that's because Congress and the administration worked to get that law passed just a few weeks ago. I'd like to begin by thanking everyone involved in the effort to preserve and promote this site and the important part of our nation's history, especially Governor Herbert, the Utah State legislators, Spike 150. I ask that we give them all a round of a hand. I also want to thank Senators Lee and Romney for their leadership in the Senate. We appreciate all that you do for our fine nation. Thank you so much. Let's give them another round. Now, one last thank you, and that's to Representative Rob Bishop, who really should get some extraordinary credit today. For those of you who might not follow public lands issues, the fact is that Representative Bishop has worked tirelessly in the House of Representatives on natural resource issues for the last 17 years. The country has benefited and continues to benefit from the leadership he has given to these matters, and there's still more to do in the next year and a half, Mr. Bishop. So let's give him a round. As one of the two representatives of President Trump's administration that are here today, I cannot help but think how much the president would love being at this event. As a builder, he would really appreciate the celebration today and what transpired 150 years ago. As I was flying out here last night, I was just thinking how significant it was that President Lincoln and the Congress came together with the concept of legislation that would grant each railroad public land and government bonds for each mile of track that they completed. What foresight to lead to such incredible infrastructure. At the Department of the Interior and the National Park Service, we are entrusted with preserving special places and ensuring that the American people have the opportunity to enjoy those places and learn their stories. The story of this site says so much about our country. The joining of the two rail lines created a new sense of connectedness that helped form a common national identity. If we just take a minute and contemplate the effort of human capital, engineering, courage, and risk-taking that all had to come together to bring the two lines that met here to this place, that should remind each of us of what we can achieve as we strive to make our country stronger. It is my hope that future visitors walk away from here inspired to maintain the determined spirit that has accomplished so much for our great country. Welcome, and I hope you really enjoy today's festivities. Thank you.
Rios Pacheco, an elder and spiritual leader of the Shoshone Nation, will now give a Native American prayer and blessing.
Dhamma ne didi divini sundiai Dhamioyelus ikadavi dastama duavia Dhammapa Dhammaika Promontory iti divi Dawi nasindawa Watua Wihai Bungu Surundamasa Central Pacific das Union Pacific ik Wihai Boha Maragi, Ika, May 10th, 1869. Damiapa, Ne Didi Divi, Sundihai, Damidawa Degwini, Dastami Nana Nuini, Zanisingan, Zamaguna, Dami Gavidan Nakan, Damaapa, Ne diviai nasasuenda ne damandua surundamas in Jesus Christ ne nashendehai osenha.
now, ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the presenting of our colors by the Utah National Guard, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and the Spike 150 Chorus and Band performing the national anthem.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Order? Order.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the national anthem of the United States of America.
The Transcontinental Railroad propelled the United States into the industrial era and positioned Utah as the crossroads of the West, a role Utahns still embrace. Who better to explore this transformation than the 17th governor of Utah, Gary R. Herbert.
Well, thank you, and good morning. What a beautiful Utah day as we gather to celebrate this significant historical event. And they've got the wrong stuff on the teleprompter. Let's see if we can find it here. If not, I'll just start. Let me say again, welcome. We're honored to have you all here. We have some special guests here that are participating with us. Again, a remarkable event in not only Utah's history, but American history, which really changed, the West, the colonization, the way we did business here in the state of Utah, opened up the West in significant ways, which we represent. I don't know about you, but standing here today, I'm experiencing a little bit of deja vu. The feeling that I've had, that I've been here and I've done this before. I suspect many here share that feeling because so many of us have seen the iconic pictures taken of the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad here at Promontory Summit on this very day 150 years ago. That event which took place on a beautiful spring morning on May 10th of 1869, much like today, was the world's first live mass media event. When Leland Stanford, one of the big four owners of the Central Pacific, tapped in the golden spike, the telegraph operator transmitted a one-word message to the awaiting world: done. And the nation celebrated. The Liberty Bell rang in Philadelphia. Hundreds of cannons thundered approval in San Francisco, Washington, D.C., and from the courthouse to City Hall and Arsenal Hall in Salt Lake City. An estimated 6,000 to 7,000 people gathered at the Tabernacle on Temple Square. Chicago celebrated with the biggest parade of the century, which was 7 miles long. And the shrieks of fire whistles and firecrackers on streets and in neighborhoods commingled with the songs and prayers heard in churches throughout America. Today, we are gathered once again on a beautiful spring morning at the same spot and with media present to commemorate and celebrate that momentous day. While we'll be hard-pressed to equal some of the celebrations that took place 150 years ago, and there we go. That was the first cannon shot, wasn't it? We are truly partying like it's 1869. I like my hat. There is certainly much that is worth celebrating in 2019. The Transcontinental Railroad helped transform Utah from an isolated frontier outpost into the crossroads of the West, which it remains to this day. It opened up the West for settlement, helped the mining and other extraction industries, and expedited the arrival of large numbers of immigrants to Utah. And it ushered in what is historians now call the American century. This anniversary is also important because we are finally giving those who did the bulk of the heavy labor their proper recognition. I am proud that we have highlighted the contributions of the more than 15,000 Chinese laborers who, along with Irish workers, Mormon workers, Native Americans, and many others, built the Transcontinental Railroad. As we reflect today on the impact of this railroad on our country and on Utah, let us also look to the future. Like the visionary leaders and dedicated workers who built the Transcontinental Railroad, we must encourage visionary Utahns to dream big and to help ensure that they have the tools to make those dreams become a reality. We must also remember that as the Transcontinental Railroad shows us, even in difficult times of deep division and discord, the Civil War, great things can be envisioned and accomplished. So this morning, in the ranks and legions of admirers of the builders of the Transcontinental Railroad, I stand front and center and salute them for their great accomplishments. God bless their memory, and may God bless us as we strive to carry out their legacy by dreaming big, by working hard together to meet the challenges of our day. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Recognize the new designation of the Golden Spike National Historic Site as a National Historic Park. Please welcome to the stage Congressman Rob Bishop, U.S. Secretary of Transportation Elaine Chao, U.S. Secretary of the Interior David Bernhardt, Senator Mike Lee, Senator Mitt Romney, former Senator Orrin Hatch, Utah Governor Gary R. Herbert, Utah Department of Agriculture Executive Director Luann Adams, Box Elder County officials, area ranchers, and representatives from the Utah Department of Transportation.
Spike 150 is about leaving a legacy that we want our children and the world to know that this country, with the help of thousands of immigrants, accomplished the seemingly impossible. The Transcontinental Railroad is a prominent symbol of the most significant achievement of the 19th century. It is that century's moon landing. The rail system shortened the trip across the plains that took months, and my ancestors had to walk every step of the way down to 5 to 6 days. To emphasize the importance of the site, of this site, where crews joined the east and the westbound tracks to create the nation's first Transcontinental Railroad. My Utah and Washington, D.C. colleagues and I have worked hard to expand this site's national importance. So I'm proud to say that on March 12th of this year, President Trump signed into law the designation in the National Resource Management Act that this Golden Spike National Historic Site is now a full-fledged National Historic Park. The Golden Spike joins such other national historic parks as Lincoln's birthplace in Kentucky, American Revolution site in Boston, Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Lewis and Clark Trail in Oregon and Washington. The park's new designation provides opportunities to attract additional tourists and economic benefits to this part of Utah. This is a tremendous way to honor the lives of those who built the railroad and share with people its stories and what took place actually here. Now, it is with great honor that I have the opportunity of asking those up on the stage to help unveil the sign that is coming now in front of us. So if you can all join up here, every one of you, grab a piece. And when I count 3 going down, ready? 3, 2, 1, unveil the sign. So move over, Mighty 5. We are now the Super 6.
Gary Herbert, President Russell M. Nelson of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, O.C. Tanner, President and CEO David Peterson, and other Spike 150 dignitaries for the presenting of the Utah Spikes and the ceremonial driving of the Utah Copper Spike.
No, you're great. Yeah, it feels like...
That was hard work.
I'm exhausted. This should be pretty cool. You saw this morning. Yeah. This is beautiful. It is. There you go. Thank you. I think I'm supposed to be between you two. Oh, yes. Giants. Good to see you up there. Thank you. Don't say that. No, really, it'll be fine. You look sharp. Everybody who's cool has a pair of white gloves. Thank you. One right. One left. President. His name is Lance Fritz. Oh, yes. Nice to meet you. My pleasure. Good to see you, President.
One straight line. What are we doing here? We're unveiling the new
We're passing by.
Okay.
It's like this. Just don't drop.
Yeah, don't drop it. Go right there. Excellent. And we got President Nelson here. There he is. Good. Good. I want to make sure.
I've got my surgical gloves on.
They're going to drive it over there. Are they going to tell us when to start? From the cameras.
I hope so.
No? Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Utah Copper Spike. Good morning, everybody. The completion of the Transcontinental Railroad is one of the most iconic and life-altering events in American history, and it happened right here in Utah 150 years ago. I'd like to thank the Spike 150 Commission for organizing such a fabulous celebration for all of us to enjoy and to remind us of this awe-inspiring act of human progress. To help mark the significance of this celebration and memorialize it for generations, the O.C. Tanner Company is pleased to present to the state of Utah the Utah Copper Spike. This spike was created in collaboration with Rio Tinto Kennecott, which donated 450 pounds of 99.99% pure Utah copper. I'd like to ask Mark Cameron from Rio Tinto Kennecott to come forward.
I think it's at the end of the line right there behind you. Yeah, it's not in the box.
There we go. Yep, thank you. And now we'd like to present this beautiful spike, product of Utah's national resources and craftsmanship, with what this event means to Utah and to our country, to our good governor, Governor Herbert.
Well, thank you, Dave. We appreciate the work. I don't know if everybody knows that there really were 4 spikes when they drove the Golden Spike. We know about that one from California, the Golden Spike. There was one from Nevada, and there was one from Arizona. There was a second little smaller spike from California, but not a Utah spike. And yet, where did we join together? Here in good old Utah. So for the first time now, we have a Utah spike. It's beautiful. And in fact, I think it's the most beautiful of all. And we want to thank O.C. Tanner, Rio Tinto. This spike truly symbolizes both our place in history as well as the history that we're making here today on May 10th of 2019. If I can just take a moment here to read aloud the inscription on one side of this spike. It says this, quote, "Great things are possible with vision, hard work, dedication, ingenuity, and collaboration. These are words for all of us to live by." This is absolutely beautiful and an amazing addition to the historic spikes created in 1869. Thank you very much.
Governor Herbert, only a few people are likely aware that there is a historic Utah spike that President Brigham Young had created for the completion of the railroad line connecting Ogden to Salt Lake City. This iron spike is engraved with these words, "Holiness to the Lord." These words honor and thank our Lord who watched over his people as they completed the link to the nation's new train system. I present this to you.
Now we have 2. Thank you, President Nelson, for shining a new light on an important part of our history. Brigham Young understood the importance of the railroad and had the foresight to ensure that rail would serve the Salt Lake Valley and the entire state of Utah. That rail line allowed early settlers to reap the benefits of the railroad and thrive in this new frontier. So thank you again very much, and let me give this back to you for safekeeping.
All these Transcontinental Railroad spikes, gold, silver, iron, and now copper, are symbols of how important it is to come together from various countries and cultures to celebrate our accomplishments. They are reminders of what can be accomplished when we join hands. My dear friends and neighbors from Utah and throughout the world, I am pleased to join with you today to honor one of our country's greatest achievements that was memorialized here on this spot 150 years ago. We are honored and blessed to be able to gather at this historic spot to commemorate the gargantuan accomplishment and the people who made it possible. When I learned of the theme of today's celebration, as one, I thought about people, the thousands of Chinese and Irish immigrants, the newly freed slaves from the southern states, the veterans who had fought so recently in the Civil War, the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints who were trying to settle in this harsh land, the Native Americans whose land was forever altered, and the many immigrants from Italy, Germany, and other places that came together to build this railroad that crossed our vast country. They came together as one. This celebration is a time for us to remember and honor what they accomplished. Their hard work, sacrifices, and spirit to get the job done helped connect this country in a way that has allowed generations of Americans and immigrants to fulfill their dreams. The words of Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence, and echoed by President Abraham Lincoln in his Gettysburg Address, that all men are created equal, resonates in my heart. Diverse people working as one had the ability to transform and unite a nation. Today, as we come together to honor the descendants of those who sacrificed and labored to physically unite this great nation, I believe that we are coming together as one. And this truly represents all that is good in this country and in the world. This celebration today reminds us also to be true to the vision for our future. President Lincoln stated, actually he prayed, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom. So we pray today that in Jon Meacham's words, the soul of America will prevail. These hardy laborers achieved a oneness that can guide us as a people to move forward to fulfill God's plan for this nation, the world, and all of his children. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity to share this remarkable day with you. We pray the Lord's blessings upon all of you. Thank you.
President Nelson, Lance Fritz, and F. Ross Peterson, please come forward for a ceremonial driving of the Utah Copper Spike. Governor Herbert, will you please take the first swing? Thank you, Governor Herbert. Lance Fritz, will you please come forward and assist in driving the spike? Thank you, Mr. Fritz. F. Ross Peterson, will you come forward and give the spike a tap? Ladies and gentlemen, we present to you the Utah Copper Spike. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome United States Secretary of Transportation, Elaine Chao.
Waiting for my cue. Where's the voice of God? Good morning. I'm the Secretary of Transportation, Elaine Chao. Today, at the 150th anniversary of the Golden Spike ceremony, marking the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad, is a day to commemorate the contribution of railroads and the contribution and sacrifices of the railroad workers, including approximately 12,000 or more Chinese laborers, who risked everything to make the Transcontinental Railroad a reality. The Transcontinental Railroad was a tremendous feat of engineering, innovation, and manpower that was key to unleashing the economic prosperity of the United States for generations. It was one of the greatest infrastructure projects in our country. And within 3 years of its completion, trains could travel from New York City to San Francisco in just 1 week. Prior to that, travelers endured up to 6 months or more of dangerous travel by ship or covered wagons to cross the continent. The ability to move people and goods across the continent at much reduced time and lower cost led to explosive economic growth. The benefits were felt not only in the big coastal cities, but in the rural interior, which gained access to new markets. Within 10 years of completion, the intercontinental railroads were shipping $50 million of freight from coast to coast each year. The act of building the Transcontinental Railroad was transformational in and of itself. The government provided land and other resources to encourage private sector investments in the railroads. Innovation and planning guided the project. Standard gauge track was adopted on a national basis, and telegraph lines were built along the track right-of-way. Nitroglycerin gradually replaced the less powerful black powder when blasting tunnels through the Sierra Mountains. The railroad workers became so skilled that a legendary team of workers, as you have heard, built 10 miles of track in a single day. Today, we pay special tribute to the diverse workforce that built the seminal project. Civil War veterans from both the North and the South worked together on the Transcontinental Railroad, along with Mormon settlers, African Americans, Native Americans, and of course, Chinese laborers. Building from the east, as you can see from the trains behind me, the Union Pacific Railroad hired Irish immigrants, African American immigrants, newly freed slaves to lay track across the Great Plains. Building from the west, the Central Pacific Railroad hired 15,000 workers, of which 12,000 or more were Chinese immigrants. These workers of Chinese ancestry blasted and chiseled their way through the rugged Sierra Nevada mountains, using manual hammer drills, pickaxes, and explosive. They dug 15 tunnels through pure, hard granite. Snow fell so deeply in the mountains that they had to build roofs over 37 miles of track so supply trains could make it through. The conditions were merciless, dangerous, and harsh. An estimated 500 to 1,000 Chinese workers lost their lives. But the Chinese workers persevered and played a key role in building one of the greatest infrastructure projects in the world. And their achievement is even more poignant in light of the fact that many of the Chinese laborers did not have the opportunity to bring their families with them or to become citizens of the United States. Many of their names are lost to history. Their families in China may never have known what became of their loved ones. As the first United States Secretary of Transportation of Chinese ancestry, I have the unique and moving opportunity to fully acknowledge and recognize the contributions and sacrifices of these laborers of Chinese heritage to the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad. This great history, which helped to transform our country, was made possible by a diverse group of other brave and determined workers. The railroad laborers and innovators of 150 years ago helped unite our country, every bit as consequential as the digital revolution that binds the world today. Today, we pay tribute to the estimated 12,000 or more Chinese laborers and all the laborers who risked so much to make this great dream a reality, the benefits of which America is still enjoying today. Thank you.
And now, welcome please to the stage Union Pacific Railroad President and Chief Operating Officer, Lance Fritz.
What a pleasure and an honor it is to be here with you today to celebrate the creation of the Transcontinental Railroad. Our celebration at Union Pacific started yesterday with the nose-to-nose meet of our two massive iron horses of today, the number 844 and the number 4014. I think maybe some of you were there yesterday. It took teams of amazing craftsmen to build this Transcontinental Railroad, like it took teams of amazing craftsmen to build those iron horses and refurbish them. We celebrate that ingenuity, that hard work, that sacrifice. And it's the same kind of sacrifice that defined this great race to where we are today, that connected our nation. That was a story of not just the laborers, but certainly them. It also included the visionaries, President Abraham Lincoln, when he signed us into existence in July of 1862. It included the stories of the First Nations of America, and how the Transcontinental Railroad fundamentally changed their culture, their lives, had significant impact. It's about the communities that were formed along our great railroad, first starting as steam stops, as water stops, and then growing into economic engines in their own right, and now sitting at the heart of our great nation. That endeavor, as you've heard over and over today, identified exactly what's achievable when a group of motivated and dedicated, diverse individuals put their mind to it and become one, in the words of President Nelson. And while that connection was finally complete here at Promontory Summit, that was not the end. That was the beginning. The creator of the famous golden spike had the wisdom to inscribe on that spike a prayer that was as appropriate on that day as it is today. May God continue to unite this country as this railroad unites the two great oceans of the world. May God continue to unite this country as this railroad unites the two great oceans of the world. That hope stands the test of time, and it's a prayer we would all be wise to reiterate today. Our company takes great pride in our history. It defines us. We think it makes us different. We think it makes us special. But most importantly, that history is a reminder of our awesome responsibility as stewards to continue to build this great nation and this great state. Thank you.
We welcome back to the stage Sergeant Ryan White of Utah National Guard for a ceremonial wreath laying to honor and remember the thousands of railroad workers who helped build the Transcontinental Railroad, and to the many who lost their lives in doing this back-breaking work. Sally Ward and Mikkel Keeney, descendants of Bernice Gibbs Anderson, who gave birth to the idea of setting aside this area of Promontory Summit to commemorate what took place here, and who started the wreath-laying tradition at Promontory. Please welcome Nathan Phillips Dodge, 4 and 5, descendants of Grenville M. Dodge, an Army officer, the Union Pacific's chief engineer and congressman. Margaret Ye, Chinese Railroad Descendant Association. Elder Hing Nung Bing Kung Tong, the Salt Lake Chapter and Chinese Cultural Center. Richard O'Connor, former president of the Hibernian Society of Utah. Grace McDonough, Hibernian Society of Utah member. Mary Roberts, Utah State University athlete. Betty Sawyer, a member of NAACP, the Community and Engagement Coordinator in Access and Diversity at Weber State University. Tommy Tucker, whose father worked for the Union Pacific Railroad 40 years. Darren Perry, the Northwestern Shoshone Nation member. Rios Pacheco, Northwestern Shoshone Nation member. Karen Morgan, descendant of Dorgan Christensen Jorgensen, killed instantly by a rock slide while working on laying track in Weber Canyon. Eli Anderson, founder of Wagon Land Adventure in Tremont, in Utah, and organizer of the 1996 Centennial Wagon Train. Mike Maurer, family member, descendant of John Sharp, head of the Mormon Graders. We'd also like to welcome Zer Ma, who played Tao on AMC's Hell on Wheels, which chronicled the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad. We'll now observe a moment of silence. Thank you very much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our keynote speaker, historian and Pulitzer Prize-winning author, Jon Meacham.
Thank you. Everything was falling apart. In the first years of the 1860s, the nation was torn asunder amid what the beleaguered wartime president would call the fiery trial of the Civil War. The conflict was existential, claiming perhaps 750,000 lives. No one knew what would happen. No one knew if the nation conceived in two Philadelphia summers, one in 1776, the other in 1787, would survive as Union and Confederate forces clashed again and again and again once war came in the spring of 1861. And yet, in the darkness of war, there were glimmers of light. In the summer of 1862, enveloped by the demands of defending the nation from armed rebellion, President Abraham Lincoln signed legislation authorizing the Transcontinental Railroad, a far-sighted act for a commander-in-chief buffeted by the winds of war. Hope in a time of fear, optimism in a moment of pessimism, a thought of the future amid the storms of the present. The Transcontinental Railroad stands even now as an emblem of American boldness and of American union. The Golden Spike was about many things, not least commerce and technology, and it was, truth be told, about some of the worst aspects of the American soul, particularly in light of the tragic treatment of Native Americans. But it was also about the best parts of that soul, those precincts of our national character that look ahead, that reach out, that dream big. We should not sentimentalize the American experience. The nation has been morally flawed, often egregiously so, from the beginning. We must be honest about that, honest about the plights of African Americans, of Native Americans, of women who have not yet voted for a century in this country, of immigrants. And our honesty should lead us to do all that we can to be about the work of justice. Talked about for 3 decades before the legislation, the fact that the Transcontinental Railroad was authorized during the Civil War and was completed in 1869 amid Reconstruction makes the whole thing unmistakably American. For to build in a time of destruction and to persevere in a time of division was very much in keeping with the spirit of a nation that had always believed, as Thomas Paine had put it, that we had it in our power to begin the world over again. And as Winston Churchill once remarked, you can always count on the Americans to do the right thing once we've exhausted every other possibility. We've proven the old boy right again and again. A continent that would come together, what Jefferson called the Empire of Liberty, would not be just parts, but a whole. The nation was united here in this place if not in spirit, in fact. And facts, as John Adams would remind us, are stubborn things. We stand, therefore, on a kind of sacred ground. The story of the Transcontinental Railroad is the story of America, for better and for worse. For both are stories of ambition and of drive, of vision and of unity, of hope and of history. And it's especially significant that we're here at this particular moment in the life of the nation. For many of the elements so essential to the conception and to the realization of this vast project seem all too elusive in our own time. A century and a half on from the foresight and the energy of a Lincoln and his battles to preserve the Union and to lay the tracks, if you will, for its future prosperity, we, you and I, are caught in a moment of public dispiritedness, of reflexive partisanship, and of a broad distrust of the future. That's not a partisan point. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I live in Tennessee, so when I say I have conservative friends, I'm being redundant. But that's why this is a good moment and a good place to reflect on who we've been and who we are and where we might go in the next 150 years. To know what's come before is to be armed against despair. Think about it just for a second. If the men and women of the past, with all of their flaws and limitations and ambitions and appetites, could press on through ignorance and superstition, through racism and sexism, through selfishness and greed, to form a more perfect union, then perhaps we too can right wrongs and leave things better than we found them. Our common welfare depends not on what separates us, despite what you see on the internet and on cable news, but on what unifies us. St. Augustine defined a nation as a multitude of rational beings united by the common objects of their love. That's a grand sentiment for a beautiful day like this, but I'm going to repeat it because it's the best definition of a nation I've ever encountered. A multitude of rational beings united by the common objects of their love. So nearly 2 decades into this new century, what do we love in common? The painful answer is we don't love enough in common. Still, I'd argue that history has the capacity to bring us together. For our story, for all of its faults, is ultimately the story of obstacles overcome, of crises resolved, of freedom expanded. We have always grown in strength the more widely we have opened our arms, and the more we have opened our hearts. From Lexington and Concord to Lewis and Clark, from Fort Sumter to D-Day, from Seneca Falls to Selma, and yes, from the canals of the East to the railroads of the West, Americans have sought to perfect our union. So what can we in our time learn from the past? That the perfect should not be the enemy of the good. That compromise is the oxygen of democracy. And that we learn the most from those who came before, not by looking up at them adoringly or down on them condescendingly, but by looking them in the eye and taking their measure as human beings, not as impossibly perfect heroes or hopelessly irredeemable villains. Knowing the history of freedom is not only illuminating, but enabling. A person who understands the past and all its glory and grandeur and horror and injustice understands that, as Churchill once put it, the path of civilization, while never straight, is essentially upward to what he called the broad sunlit uplands of happiness and peace. We stand now in the sunlight, the beautiful sunlight, of a legacy of union for the architects and the builders and the lawmakers and the laborers who transformed a dream into a reality in this place 150 years ago, knew that a nation connected might just be a nation unified. It was made possible by the powerful in government and in commerce, and by the powerless, the immigrant laborers from China, from Ireland, and elsewhere, who joined in the hard, unforgiving work of construction. And it was, we should note, constructed in an era of prevailing white supremacy and an ongoing struggle to more broadly and justly apply the implications of what may well have been the most important sentence ever rendered originally in English. Jefferson's assertion, that President Nelson mentioned, that all men are created equal. Now, I will say quickly, I am always careful when I make hyperbolic claims that something is the most important ever rendered in English, not least because of the old story about the Texas school board candidate who was against teaching Spanish in public schools and said on the stump one day, if English was good enough for our Lord Jesus Christ, it's good enough for Texas. So, I'm from Tennessee, so I do all I can to make Texas remember that they would still be part of Spain if it weren't for us. Easy, yeah, there's a Texan here. You get your papers stamped on your way? I made that joke to George W. Bush when he was governor of Texas, and I said, you know, sir, if it weren't for me, you know, you'd be governor of a province in Spain. He went, that's pretty funny, jerk. Anyway, sorry. We stand here today knowing that the work of America is not done, that in many ways the American Revolution unfolds still. That's our blessing and our burden. If a nation fighting for its survival in the crucible of the 19th century could transcend the tumult of the moment to do something this big and this hopeful, then why can't we? The Transcontinental Project was shaped by sectionalism, by battles for power, by party politics, by slavery and freedom, and yet our forebears delivered. However bad things are right now, and that, like so much else in America, today and always, is a matter of opinion. I, for one, would rather be dealing with Facebook than Fort Sumter. Wouldn't you? Let's not indulge ourselves in the narcissism of the present and act as though our problems are more insuperable than anything that ever confronted any previous generation. The problems that were overcome to create a nation where, for all our ferocity, what George Washington called the sacred fire of liberty still burns here. And for all of our unhappiness, what is our immigration issue in this country? Our immigration issue is that people want to come here. As Ronald Reagan said, they are all the pilgrims from all the lost places who are hurtling through the darkness toward home. If Americans want to know what is possible, come here. If they want to know what can happen when government and the private sector cooperate rather than clash, come here. If they want to know how to build a nation worth fighting for, come here. And if they want to know why a spirit of union matters, come here. And if they want to understand how the faith of Jefferson and Lincoln and TR and FDR and John Kennedy and Ronald Reagan, a faith founded on the conviction that tomorrow can be better than today, and how that faith can find tangible expression, come here. The story is not perfect, but then neither are we. History tells us that we rise when we build and we thrive when we give everyone what Lincoln called a fair chance. A fair chance. Such was the animating impulse behind the Golden Spike, and big ideas and big dreams are the stuff of the best of American history. And in that history lies our hope. Thank you.
That's what this shows this afternoon.
What's interesting is the difference in mileage and track.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the presentation of a 20-star flag. A 20-star flag flown above these ceremonies in 1869. The Golden Spike National Historical Park reenactors will now perform a historical reenactment of the driving of the Golden Spike. This reenactment has been taking place here for 50 years, and some of these performers have participated in reenactments for more than 50 years, and some are the second generation in their families to take part. New this year, as part of the 150th anniversary celebration, the reenactment will open with a scene showcasing the workers who built the railroad. Performers of this reenactment include Sid Bottely, Raymond Chan, Jeff Chan, Terrence Chen, Joe Eldridge, Richard Felt, Jeff Jadfield, Dale Johnson, Louis Nahn, Ross Reeder, Curtis Roach, Richard Kwan, Shishan Lin, Jerry Nelson, Scott Nelson, Greg Neville, Kevin Strasser, Stan Summers, Corey Wild, Brian Yee, Dustin Yee, and Boyd Young.
The date is May 10th, 1869. The place is Promontory Summit, Utah, an unlikely spot for the culmination of an undertaking that will mark the ending of the Old West and the beginning of the new. But they have come, the famous and the unknown, the wealthy and the poor, the laborer and his boss, the Chinese from the west and the Irish from the east, mingling with the local residents in a strange communion. The gathering is both festive and anxious, awaiting that moment of miracle when a common railroad spike driven into an ordinary railroad tie will link a continent. A gentle breeze is blowing under an almost cloudless sky. The thermometer on the shaded side of the Central Pacific Telegraph car registers 69 degrees. Above the babble of voices can be heard the soft hissing of the steam locomotives, which herald the beginning of a new era. A polished tie of laurelwood has been placed in its ceremonial position by the construction superintendents of both railroads. And then Edgar Mills steps forward, a wealthy banker and friend of the Central Pacific Railroad officials, steps forward and signals for silence. And so a nation, as well as the spectators gathered here, await as the drama of men's hopes, prayers, and dreams began to unfold on this 10th day of May, 1869. And you are here.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the officials of both railroads, the Union Pacific and the Central Pacific, I bid you welcome. We are met today to commemorate the completion of a project which is a remarkable example of the vision, the determination, and the labor of thousands of men in a union which this day shall be consummated forever. We are assembled here to link the ends of the earth, to join the raw riches of the American West with the finished products of the industrial East. We are also met this day with mixed emotions, with joy that in a combined effort and a common cause, the brains, the sweat, and the muscle of thousands of men have joined together under the guidance of Almighty God. But it is with profound sorrow that we remember and pay homage to the hundreds of men who gave their lives that we might stand here at this moment and share one with another this sacred occasion. Among those whose presence we are honored to acknowledge at this time include a number of railroad officials from both lines, in addition to those taking part in the ceremony. We also take pride in the presence of the 21st Infantry Band. They are under the command of Major Milton Cogswell. We take pride in the presence of many great newspapers from our country. Among those dignitaries present include Bishop John Sharp, the railroad bishop representing Governor Brigham Young. We also have Mayor Lauren Farr of Ogden. The beautifully uniformed band is from the Mormon 10th Ward from Salt Lake City. And now, to unite us in thanks to our Creator, may I introduce a man who has traveled many weary miles to be with us today. He is the Reverend John Todd from Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Reverend Todd.
Thank you very much. From Promontory to the country. Bulletin, all ready now, hats off, prayer is being offered.
Our Father in God, and our Father's God, God of creation and God of providence, Thou hast created the heavens and the earth. Thou hast also created all those who have been here and participate in this program. We give thanks for all the blessings that Thou hast given us, Father. And we ask Thy blessings to be upon us here assembled and upon Thy people everywhere, that peace may flow unto us as a gentle stream, and that this mighty enterprise may be unto us as the Atlantic of Thy strength and the Pacific of Thy love, through Jesus the Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
Promontory to the country, we have got done praying. The spike is about to be presented.
Thank you, Reverend Todd. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce a fellow resident of Sacramento, Dr. H.W. Harkness, who will present 2 railroad spikes to Dr. Thomas C. Durant of the Union Pacific Railroad and Governor Leland Stanford of the Central Pacific Railroad. Dr. Durant and Governor Stanford will then place these spikes into holes that have already been drilled in the laurelwood tie. But these are not ordinary spikes. Ladies and gentlemen, These are golden spikes made from pure California gold. Dr. Hargis.
Thank you. Gentlemen of the Pacific Railroad, and those of you who have met with us, the last spike needed to unite the Atlantic and the Pacific by a new line of trade and commerce is about to be driven to its place. To perform this act, the East and the West have come together. Never since history commenced her record of human events has man been called upon to meet the completion of a work so magnificent in contemplation and so marvelous in execution. California, within whose borders and by whose citizens the Pacific Railroad was inaugurated, desires to express her appreciation of the vast importance to her and her sister states of the great enterprise which by joint action is about to be consummated. From her mines of gold has been forged a spike. From her laurelwoods has been hewn a tie. And by the hands of her citizens, she offers them to become part of this great highway which is about to unite her in closer fellowship with her sisters of the Atlantic. From her bosom was taken the first soil. Let hers be the last tie and the last spike. And with them, accept the hopes and wishes of her people, that the success of your enterprise will not stop short of its brightest promise. This spike was donated by Mr. Frank Marriott, publisher of the San Francisco Newsletter. And in conclusion, I should like to draw your attention to this spike, the gift of David Hughes of San Francisco. On its head is inscribed the last spike. On 3 sides, the names of railroad officials, and on the 4th side, this sentence: may God continue the unity of our country as this railroad unites the 2 great oceans of the world. Dr. Durant? Governor Stanford.
Absolutely beautiful. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. F.A. Treitel, a United States Railroad Commissioner and candidate for governor of the great state of Nevada. He will present a spike of pure silver from the famed Comstock lode on behalf of the people of Nevada. Mr. Treitel.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. To the iron of the East and the gold of the West, Nevada adds her link of silver to span the continent and wed the oceans.
We are highly honored today with the presence of the Honorable Anson P.K. Safford, who is en route to Arizona as the newly appointed territorial governor. He was kind enough to delay his journey in order to make a presentation on behalf of the Arizona Territory. Governor Safford.
Ribbed with iron, clad in silver, and crowned with gold, Arizona presents her offering that has banded the continent and directed the pathway to commerce.
And now, friends, it is not only my duty, but my honor and privilege to introduce a man of vision, a man of courage, a humanitarian, and one who is highly esteemed by those of us who call him our friend. He is a Californian whose farsightedness has contributed in large measure to the success of this great enterprise. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the Central Pacific Railroad, Governor Leland Stanford.
Gentlemen, the Pacific Railroad companies accept with pride and satisfaction these gold and silver tokens of your appreciation of the importance of our enterprise to the material interests of the whole country, north, south, east, and west. These gifts shall receive a fitting place in the superstructure of our road. But before driving the last spike in the completion of the Pacific Railroad, allow me to express the hope that the great importance which you are pleased to attach to our undertaking may be in every respect fully realized. This line of rails connecting Atlantic and Pacific and affording to commerce a new transit will prove, we trust, the speedy forerunner of increased facilities. The day is not far distant when 3 tracks shall be found necessary to accommodate the commerce and travel which shall seek transit across this continent. Freight will move only in one way on each track to answer the demands of cheapness and time. In conclusion, I might add, we hope to do ultimately that which is now impossible on long lines: transport coarse, heavy, and cheap products at living rates to the trade.
Indeed, Thank you, Governor Stanford, for your astute and timely remarks. We regret that Dr. Durant is suffering from a severe headache and has temporarily retired to his quarters. In his absence, and in the absence of the President of the Union Pacific Railroad, Mr. Oliver Ames, we have asked General Grenville Dodge, Chief Engineer, to represent his railroad with a few remarks.
Mr. Mills, thank you. Gentlemen, the great senator from Missouri, Thomas Hart Benton, proposes someday a giant statue of Columbus should be erected on the highest peak of the Rocky Mountains, pointing westward, denoting this as the great route across our continent. Today, you have made that prophecy a fact. This is the way to India!
Thank you, General Dodge. Ladies and gentlemen, that moment for which you and the entire nation have been waiting. The driving of the last spike is at hand. At this time, we wish to commend both railroad companies and their workers for their efficiency and hard work in bringing this monumental undertaking to its successful fruition in a record 6.5 years instead of the 12 years allotted to the venture. A final presentation will be made in the form of a silver-plated spike mall by Mr. L.W. Coe, President of the Pacific Union Express Company, after which Governor Stanford and Dr. Durant will make a few ceremonial taps on the precious metal spikes with the mall. Mr. Coe.
Thank you. Railroad officials, honored guests, and friends, it is the honor of the officers and workers of the Pacific Union Railroad Company who add their congratulations upon the completion of this modern-day miracle. This silver-plated spike mall is symbolic of our good wishes.
I don't know where I went. Absolutely beautiful. At this point, I should explain that the last spike is a regular iron railroad spike that can be driven with the maul. Both the spike and the maul have been wired to the Transcontinental Telegraph line so that people everywhere can hear the blows as the spike is driven. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the moment has arrived. Boston and New Orleans have wired that they are ready and waiting. Indeed, throughout the length and breadth of the country, people everywhere are waiting at every Western Union station. As Mr. Schilling gives the signal that the last spike is driven, a magnetic ball will fall in the dome of the national Capitol. In San Francisco, the fire alarm bell will ring. A volley of 200 rounds will be fired in salute at Fort Point, and in Philadelphia, the Liberty Bell will ring again.
We're ready.
Promontory to the country, all ready now. Dr. Durant has adjusted the spike. The spike will soon be driven. The signal will be 3 dots for the commencement of the blows.
All right, Governor.
Oh!
Oh! You better back up there, Doctor, or Governor. Didn't do any better. We got somebody who knows.
Perhaps we need a real railroad worker up here to make this star job done.
Yeah.
There we go. Drive her home. That's it.
Promontory to the country. Bulletin D O N E done.
A wonderful railroad. Henceforth, there will be but one Pacific Railroad of these United States.
Yeah.
3 cheers.
3 cheers for the Union Pacific Railroad. Hip, hip.
Hooray!
Hip, hip.
Hooray!
Hip, hip.
Hooray! And now 3 cheers for the Union Pacific Railroad. Excuse me, Central Pacific Railroad. Hip, hip. Hooray! Hip, hip. Hooray! Hip, hip. Hooray! You're not all hip-hipping.
Promontory to the country, to President Ulysses S. Grant, Washington, D.C. Mr. President, final bulletin. The last rail is laid, the last spike is driven. The Pacific Railroad is completed to a junction 1,086 miles west of the Missouri River, 690 miles east of Sacramento City, California.
Get clear forward. They're going to move the locomotives.
Code.
At that moment, one era ended and another began. The golden spike became a symbol of hope for a better way of life with new challenges yet to be accomplished. We thank you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, for being here today. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big hand for our reenactment. Now please welcome to the stage Ireland's ambassador to the United States, Daniel Mulhall, who will offer a celebratory toast in honor of all of those who labored tirelessly to complete the world's first transcontinental railroad.
As Ambassador of Ireland to the United States of America, I am truly honored to stand here today in recognition of the enormous role played by some 10,000 Irish men in the building of the Transcontinental Railroad. Theirs was a magnificent contribution to the making of modern America. Remember that those Irish railroad workers were drawn from the 6 million Irish immigrants who crossed the Atlantic between 1840 and 1900, escaping from famine and seeking better lives for themselves and their family in this great continent. They and their descendants became part of the fabric of modern America. And their achievements in America have been a source of inspiration to the Ireland they left behind. Those Irish workers were, of course, joined in the great endeavor we celebrate today by many thousands of Chinese workers and others, including from the Mormon settlements here in Utah, Native Americans, and recently emancipated African Americans. That mix of peoples working together in harmony in pursuit of a shared objective was characteristic of this land of opportunity that was 19th century America. It made this country a beacon of hope and expectation for so many millions of people who came here from all over the world, including from my own country. Those who built this railroad battled the elements and an ever-challenging terrain to achieve the goal of connecting East and West on this great continent. I would say that the Transcontinental Railroad was one of the greatest feats of the 19th century. It falls to me to propose a toast to those workers whose names are largely absent from the historical record, but whose lives and labors were indispensable to this country's development. We remember today all of those who laid rails, built bridges, and blasted rock, thus helping to make a reality of the dreams of this nation. We celebrate the tens of thousands of hands that built a railroad that truly unified this vast and diverse country. As we say in the Gaelic language, and by the way, many of the Irish immigrants who worked on this railroad would have spoken Gaelic or Irish as their first language. As we say in Irish, Mahan Uber, or good work. I now want to, with the help of my wife Greta, who is the descendant of Irish immigrants who went to Australia in the 19th century, I want to raise a glass to salute all of those workers from many lands who built this epic railroad. Sláinte. I'm sorry I'm the only one with a glass in my hand, but there you are. I will sip on behalf of all of you. Thank you very much.
We are now honored to have a special message from the People's Republic of China Ambassador to the United States, the Honorable Sui Tiankai.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me to address this distinguished audience. First of all, please allow me to extend my warmest congratulations on the Golden Spike 150 Festival. Over 150 years ago, thousands of Chinese workers overcame incredible difficulties and endured inconceivable sacrifices to make an indelible contribution to the Transcontinental Railroad. This is a project of a wonder of the world that linked America together from sea to a shining sea and laid the foundation for the American economic boom. This is also a telling example of how the Chinese and American people can come together to get things done and make the impossible possible. This is particularly true today. A strong bond between China and the United States can deliver real benefits to our two countries and to the world community.
The Spike 150 Commission is proud to present the original musical production and ceremonial reenactment entitled As One. As One music is written and directed by award-winning composers, producers, and songwriters Stephen Nelson and Jeanette Mickelson. Jennifer Parker Howell wrote this script and directs the piece that features some of Utah's finest talent. Actress Lauren Tom, who appeared in the Joy Luck Club, Grace Under Fire, and Friends, performs the role of narrator. Distinguished musician, educator, and conductor, Dr. Craig Jessup is the show's executive producer. We now present As One.
150 years ago today, this very spot was alive with the celebration of one of the greatest feats of humankind, the first intercontinental railroad. There was an undeniable energy in the air with the anticipation of all the new possibilities and opportunities that lay ahead. Here at Promontory Summit on May 10th, 1869, was the most important place in the whole world for one glorious day. Imagine with me what it would have been like so many years ago. Just scan across this vast, uncharted landscape. The year was 1862, and our country was in the middle of the Civil War. President Abraham Lincoln, a former railroad lawyer, looked to the future and saw the importance of not only physically, but symbolically tying our fractured nation together and signed into law the Pacific Railroad Act.
Thank you, dear lady. Allow me to explain my thinking. I have always been fascinated by trains and have ridden the rails every chance I had. Growing up on the frontier of Illinois, I could look out to the untamed West and see that moving goods and traveling by rail was our future. I want to introduce you to my friend, Theodore Judah. Theodore, come on out. He loves trains even more than I do.
I'm just crazy about trains. My whole life has been dedicated to the idea of a transcontinental railroad. It will be built, and I'm going to have something to do with it. I have an idea, Mr. President. What if we make one railroad line that comes in from the west and another that comes in from the east? They could meet up in the middle.
Crazy Judah. He took his big ideas and told them to anyone who would listen. He made the treacherous ocean voyage around the tip of South America 3 times, trying to convince politicians in Washington, D.C., then the ones in California, and then back again.
Each trip took 6 weeks, but that is much shorter than the 6 months to travel on land. A transcontinental railroad is the only answer.
I've been thinking that same thing.
Well, hello, Dodge. You're just the man I've been waiting to talk to. This is Grenville Dodge. He's a great engineer and surveyor. Dodge, what's the best route for Pacific Railroad to the west?
It will start round Omaha, Nebraska, and then continue out west along the 42nd parallel. It's good and flat all the way to the Rocky Mountains. The other railroad will start east out of Sacramento, California. Then they will meet here, somewhere in the middle.
Yes, we could pay them for every mile of track they lay, making a great race to the finish.
Yes, let's get started.
Wait a minute. Who's going to build it? We're going to need men. Lots and lots of men.
They will have to be strong and not afraid of death.
Yes, they'll all have to work together in spirit of unity and teamwork.
The ironic thing here is that the men that built the railroad were none other than the outcasts and the persecuted of the nation. And these misunderstood people who struggled to find their place in America ended up being the very ones that helped unite the entire country. They were brave men who literally changed the American way of life, who in pursuing their own American dream, made millions of other Americans' dreams possible. Coming from the east, working for the Union Pacific Railroad, were the Irish.
Across the vast uncharted landscape.
Young veterans of the Civil War, the Irish immigrants were seen as a rough, hard-drinking people who preferred settling their disagreements with their fists.
Pray to God that luck be on my side.
And while it is true that they played hard, they also worked hard and were set on getting a piece of the American dream for themselves.
Feel it in my bones that fair work and pay. We'll find it all again in no time.
And coming from the California coast were the Chinese.
Scanned across the vast uncharted landscape.
They were seen as strange and suspicious foreigners who kept to themselves and their traditions.
Show the path my family spirit guides.
But between the gold rush of 1849 and the work of the railroad, they were chasing opportunities to change their destinies as well.
Who knows what fortune waits beyond the tracks? Maybe that's the goal we're gonna find. 'Cause when you realize what you really want, you hold on tight and you don't let go. I won't stop till I claim my own, till dreams in the end combine in my hand as one.
And working right alongside of the Irish and the fought for their freedom in the Civil War.
Scan across the vast uncharted landscape.
Even though they'd helped to win the war, many people still thought of them as property less than human.
My chains are gone, delivered by the Lord.
Working on the railroad provided not only money for these newly freed men, but for a chance out of the South and for a new start westward.
The promised land is just around the bend. We're reaping from the seeds the Lord has sown. 'Cause when you realize what you really want, you hold on tight and you don't let go. I won't stop till I claim my own, till dreams in the end combined in my hand as one.
And they did work together as one.
Teamwork!
Remember, there were no machines back then. This was going to be built by their hands, by their bare hands.
And by their hearts and their minds. While some of the men worked on the engineering and inventing new things, like brakes, the cow catcher, and the railroad lantern.
Other men rolled up their sleeves, picked up their shovels and hammers, and got to work to lay the actual track.
Work. Really hard work, as you can imagine. Back-breaking work performed sunrise to sunset, 6 days a week in all kinds of weather on all kinds of terrain. From the heat and harsh winds of the Great Plains to the unforgiving and bitter cold of the Sierra Nevada and Rocky Mountains. Out here today, you can almost hear the echo of those endless days spent long ago. The rhythmic sounds of the hammer against steel, the explosions of black powder felt in the chest, even music, the songs men would sing to help pass the time.
The clank of the hammers down against the rails, the slamming of the metal raining down like hail, takes me right back to the war against the South, fighting for freedom to get my brothers and sisters out. Day in and day out, the shouting of the men brings me right back to the wailing of the dead. The same friends I had there on both sides of the war. Side by side we work here among the dust and sweat and ore. Oh, how long till the sun gives away, doing all the work no one else would take, left with the echoes ringing in our ears. The crack of explosions rip away the rock. They become so familiar, we were forced to take our lot. From the mines of the gold rush, the cost's been too high, to the high Sierra Mountains where they gambled with our lives. Oh, how long till the sun gives away, doing all the work no one else would take, left with the echoes
After a long day, you would think these hardworking men would eat some supper and call it a day. And perhaps sometimes they did. But sometimes they would grow weary and restless with the sameness of their daily lives and have a need to just blow off some steam.
Blow that whistle, drop that hammer, and clock, you're now finally free. 16 hours and all that I'm thinking is how I'm gonna blow off steam. Nothing fancy or civilized when you're talking about a hell on wheels. It's time to show you how living's done. Gonna show you how to blow off steam. 'Cause out here the secret to survive is to kick back at any chance. On the frontier, you leave the world behind for a break that never lasts. Though we may seem we're all at odds, there's one thing we agree. Nothing's giving his time for a living. A man's gotta give in and blow off steam. All that aching and hard back breaking, I'll drown them out with something fierce. Man, I need this today. Lord have mercy, if I wander, I'll clean it up with holy tea. Throw my cares away. Sunset's winking, so now I'm thinking there's nothing left here to see. I'm saving enough for my future now. That's how. Man, I need this today. Oh Lord, have mercy. Blow off steam.
Finally, the men would return to their separate encampments for well-earned rest.
Children, hush now. You'll wake your father. He's the construction manager for the entire Central Pacific Railroad, and he needs his sleep. Now tuck yourselves back in.
Out here, women were as scarce as a bathtub. In fact, there was only one woman who witnessed the building of either railroad from beginning to end, and what a woman she was. Hannah Maria Strobridge came out with her husband James and was determined to make a home for herself and him and their 6 adopted children. An ordinary passenger car was made into a 3-bedroom home on wheels. She was honored with the title the Heroine of the Central Pacific, and indeed, she was heroic to the men of the railroad. She bandaged their wounds while they told her of their troubles and nursed the sick back to health. She had a big heart and was quick to smile, and they loved her for it.
Another day is done as we inch down the track. It's hard to let go of the need to look back as the train moves on. How it seems we don't. We're a raggedy group of misfits with pride. We work nose to nose, but we're distant inside. When we feel so bound, can we see somehow our stories all feel so far away, but tonight somehow they all feel
for the best, but plan for the worst. I dream like the rest, though branded and slurred. How can I trust someone I want to call? Caught in a mess, can I come around to forgive somehow? Our stories all feel so far away, but tonight somehow they all feel the same. They all feel the same. All the tales we're told, are they really so?
Chinese workers made up 90% of the workforce on the western portion of the line. The railroad could not have been built, let alone finished, without these thousands of nameless Chinese men. They were little understood and largely invisible to the men who employed them. The Iron Road, as they called it, stands as a monument to the Chinese worker, his unsurpassed work ethic, and ultimately his immense influence in forging the American West. But perhaps no one group of people suffered or sacrificed more for the ultimate success of the railroad than the Native American. Their traditions, their lands, sometimes even their sacred sites were trampled and dishonored by the advancement of the road and the men who came with it. Foreign diseases devastated entire tribes. The buffalo, their main food supply, were shot down for sport. Many of the tribes fought back in protest, sending their warriors to attack the workers and disrupt the progress. But the sheer size and scope of this massive undertaking was eventually overwhelming. Between the deaths of the warriors, widespread starvation and disease, the proud Native American was involuntarily compelled to accept his new circumstances and place in the hierarchy of this new America. There was one more group of people who we haven't even mentioned yet. These people had known more than their fair share of persecution, as they too were unlawfully forced from their lands and homes. Known for their hard work and industrious spirit, these refugees were in desperate need of money and opportunity. As the construction of the railroad grew near their sanctuary in the desert, these exiles, the Mormons, saw their chance and jumped to be a part of the action.
I'm out to beat the sunset for a chance I won't pass by. It's like we hold tomorrow right in our hands. Through crops and persecution, we've passed through trial by fire, and up against the odds we still stand.
With the surge of Mormons joining the ranks in the fall of 1868, construction on the railroads accelerated on both sides. This raised the stakes, pitting the Union Pacific against the Central Pacific in a colossal race to the finish.
By this time, the workers were so efficient they could lay down track at nearly the rate of a man walking. Think of that.
When the Union Pacific boasted of laying 7 miles of track in one day, Charles Crocker, one of the 4 founders of the Central Pacific, put it to his men.
Men, I challenge you all to best the mark of 7 miles of track in one day set down by the boys of the Union Pacific. And let us show them what we are made of by laying 10 miles of track in one day.
The proof is all around us that right now is our time. We set our sights, so we'll jump in line against the odds.
And so, in the gray light of the early dawn, these men began one of the greatest feats of human determination the world has ever seen.
So close we can taste it. Time to turn back now. It's like we hold tomorrow right in our hands. And a likely band of brothers, we've been pushed down still stand, stand. Scan across the vast uncharted landscape. Scan across the vast uncharted landscape. Up against the odds, we still stand. The proof is all around us, and right now is our time. We set our sights, now we'll jump in line against the odds. Scan across the vast uncharted landscape. Scan across the vast uncharted landscape. Up against the odds, we still stand. The proof is all around us, and right now is our time. We set our sights, now we'll jump in line against the odds, against the odds,
Did they do it? Yes, they did. On April 28, 1869, these men laid down 10 miles and 56 feet of track in a little less than 12 hours. This is the longest stretch that has ever been built by hand or machine in one day to this day.
Less than 2 weeks later, on May 10th, 1869, a glorious spring day, the final spike of the first Transcontinental Railroad, the Golden Spike, was ready to be driven into the tie right here, uniting East and West together from sea to shining sea, just as Abraham Lincoln, Crazy Judah, and Grenville Dodge envisioned many years before. The presidents of both the Union Pacific and Central Pacific joined the territorial governors and other dignitaries, along with reporters from all over the country, to witness this momentous and pivotal event. The air was alive with anticipation. The two great engines, the Jupiter and the number 119, had been brought in facing each other. The two train engineers, Booth and Bradford, pulled on their whistles to send up a greeting.
James Strobert and Samuel Reed brought forth the laurel tie. Right beside them came a crew of Chinese workers wearing clean blue tunics, carrying in one rail from the Central Pacific, and an Irish crew carried in the one from the Union Pacific. Champagne bottles were waiting to be popped. A military band from nearby Fort Douglas was on hand, ready to fill the air with music. A young bugler, Thomas Shore Wadsworth, was nervously awaiting the signal.
I'm ready and waiting, sirs.
The moment was here. Leland Stanford, another one of the 4 leaders of the Central Pacific, was given the great honor of driving in the final spike.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pride that I, Leland Stanford, drive in the final spike. Let me try that again.
No, you've had your chance. Give me that hammer. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pride that I, Thomas Durant, President of the Union Pacific Railroad, drive in this final spike.
Let Strobridge have
the governors have a
Can
try.
I try? Sure. What about Miss Strobridge?
Oh, why, I'd be honored.
Yes.
Perhaps we should give the men who built this railroad a crack at it.
At the first swing, however, the message went like lightning across the telegraph telegraph wire, D-O-N-E, and immediately the entire nation erupted as one in cheering and rejoicing.
Bells started ringing across the nation.
The boom of hundreds of cannons echoed across the cities of San Francisco and Washington, D.C. Prayers and singing were heard in churches of all denominations.
The tabernacle on Temple Square was filled to overflowing with over 7,000 people.
Chicago put on the largest parade of the century and nearly 7 miles long.
Even our cherished Liberty Bell in Philadelphia rung in celebration.
Forging ahead to make it loud and clear. So we rang out the bells, finally showing what we want the whole world now to hear. Look at us now, what new start is here.
In the end, no one knows who struck the final blow, and maybe that's just as it should be. For it wasn't just one man who made all this possible. It was many people, many hands, minds, and hearts working together in a spirit of unity and determination. The first Transcontinental Railroad was and still stands as one of the greatest examples of the true spirit of America.
I feel it in my bones, the future holds. I feel lucky on my side now. The fortune that we're gonna find. One as one, as one, as one, as one. 'Cause when you realize what you really want, you take your hands and you make them one. We don't know all that can be done. Just strangers before, divided, unite as one, as one, as
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the national anthem of the United States of America.